Welcome to Devlog 17 for Project 2, a dark fantasy VR game we're making here at Alta. This is the last devlog of the year, so I just wanted to say thank you all so much for watching the game develop. I can't wait to show you all the game continue to grow and evolve next year, so stay tuned for lots more very soon. But for this last devlog of the year, I want to give you all a deep dive on a ton of new developing features in the game, and end this year with a massive video showcasing tons of new things to you all right here. And let's begin that video with a look at art, specifically our environments. As you can see, the way the game looks has been updated again. There's tons of reasons for these changes, but instead of explaining it myself, I thought I'd ask Sean, our lead environment artist, to join me for this devlog.
Hey Matt.
Hey Sean, well, people can see here that the dungeons look quite different now. What were your goals with this updated look for the dungeons?
So when we did the first pass, it was more a case of getting in something pretty quickly so that design could get to work and our tech art team could run some performance tests. So we wanted something representative, so the amount of geometry, textures and materials that we'd have in the final game so we could start running those tests. But it also gave us a bit of time to think about what would really work for our project, because we spent quite a bit of time in these dungeons at the moment. And one of the first things really that came up was that many VR games kind of suffer from extremely noisy textures that look quite muddy. And we were sort of having similar issues. It's mostly down to the low resolution of the textures and aggressive mapping due to the hardware limitations. So instead of going against the grain, I reduced the amount of high frequency noise in our textures. I also reduced the amount of values and made them a lot tighter. And that generally helped everything to flow a lot nicer and feel a lot softer, especially with textures in a distance at lower resolutions. The other thing were the saturation levels of the environment. So we knew that we wanted to go with a sort of like a sandstony desert limestone look versus your standard sort of granite castles that you generally see. But the problem that we had was that the orange and the saturation of the textures wasn't really playing too well with the color of our lights. Generally speaking, the more controlled your saturation levels are in an environment, the more freedom you have with your lights, and vice versa. One of the first things I did was just reduce the amount of saturation and bring it down a notch. And the next thing was the geometry. So we had a lot of straight lines. That is generally something you see with low poly assets. So just to make everything feel a lot more natural and softer, I just broke up those straight lines with a bit of extra geometry. And I also tried to make it feel more logical from an architectural standpoint. And that when you look at it now, it kind of makes a bit more sense on how this would have been assembled when it was originally built.
Yeah, I think that all sounds fantastic, and people can already see like it looks amazing in all the footage here, and people hopefully can see that in this devlog, and I'm looking forward to seeing what people think of it. One thing I really want to ask about is, now that we have this more desaturated look, can we play a lot more with light color and things like that, and what are the plans for lighting in general actually going forward?
Yeah, we have a lot of ideas for lighting in the pipeline. One example is using certain hues for natural lights so that players will know exactly where they are in the environment. So they might see moonlight when they're higher up, or different types of light like crystals or something like that when they're further down. But we are going to start to introduce different alternative light sources other than just flames. And like we mentioned, because of the saturation changes, it'll allow us to have a lot more fun with the variation of colors. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, awesome stuff. I'm sure everyone will be excited to see that evolve, and when we get the dungeons into even cooler places with different lighting and all things like that, it'll be great. Actually, talking of, what can you tease for people of the future of environments going forward?
So I'm currently working on a modular kit for a cave system, and that'll basically provide a more organic contrast to the current structures that we have. But then, of course, we'll be seeing things like barracks, mess halls, catacombs as we get deeper into development and start to expand on them along.
That's really exciting. Yeah, I can't wait to see all of that and get to show them off in the devlogs. But thank you so much for joining us this week on this devlog, Sean.
No, thank you very much for having me.
Even though Sean has left the devlog now, I still want to touch on the topic of art a little bit more, as Sean has been working on updating a bunch of other smaller assets in the game. You may have noticed them in the background of footage in the past couple of devlogs, but we have potions now. Potions work just like a food currently, where you just put it up to your face, but in the future maybe we'll have to uncork them and use them. Talking of, they actually have a brand new model now, as you can see here, with a much more stone-like pottery design, rather than the classic potions which were just all one colour that we had previously. Another thing we have is these planks, which used to be white boxes which you could walk over to cross gaps. These are now much better looking wooden planks that if you put too much weight on, they break and physically interact with the environment when they do. Even the portcullis we saw in the last devlog has got some art now and looks much more like some old rusty bars blocking off an area. Another thing you may have spotted in the background of some footage in previous devlogs are ladders. They worked pretty simply in the past where you just would walk up them, but now you can actually climb them and interact with them in a cool way in VR. Maybe you even want to climb up one a little, let go of one hand and then pull out your crossbow and take aim. Well, now you can do that. Overall, having these to climb up to areas is a lot of fun and feels like a real VR moment, being able to interact and physically climb up to different areas of the dungeons. Now you're all caught up on things like art and climbing, I can give you all a deeper dive into two brand new mechanics in the game. The first is something we're currently calling echoes. You can see that with my debug dev UI turned on here in the upper left, it says echoes 0. Echoes is a temporary name for a sort of in-dungeon currency. This is the earliest I've ever shown a new mechanic in the game, so be aware this will develop a lot more over the coming months. But as an example of how this works, if I kill the skeleton here, you can see that I now have one echo. We plan to have a number of systems for you to spend echoes on, but one will be smaller ways to extract or escape from the dungeons. Instead of having to go and fight the boss to spawn an extraction portal, you can now fight lower tier enemies and get out with your loot by spending some echoes. These escape routes currently cost 15 echoes, and that's it. You're out with all your loot. This whole mechanic is very early and being tweaked constantly, so by the time this video is out, it's likely already changed, but I wanted to share it all with you now so you can get an idea of some of the core gameplay changes that have been happening. Having these echoes also means that the boss fight experience can be tailored and tweaked with better rewards and higher challenge, as it's not the only way to extract now. It also means that you have more options and ways to play the game overall. It has massively changed how we play already, and we're loving it in our internal playtests. You may be wondering how this mechanic will look visually in the future, as it's just a simple number on the screen right now. Well, here you can see some early concepts exploring the future of echoes and how they could work. From physically pulling the soul or echo out of a dead enemy and collecting it, something like this, all the way to the visual language behind these echoes and what they might look like and be made up of. Maybe the dark creature you just defeated begins to evaporate or leave their echo behind for you to collect. All of this and more is being explored and concepted internally right now, but I wanted to share these early ideas with you all to make you all think about the future of this mechanic. Joel has already added a very early representation of this echo mechanic idea too. In this dev environment, I can kill an enemy and they drop a blue orb. This is very much dev art, and this is an enemy's echo or soul or whatever we end up calling these. And we can slash it to collect it and tick up our on-screen counter dev UI up in the top corner to 1. Killing one of these bigger clubman skeletons drops 3, and these can be collected by you, or maybe you want a teammate to be the one getting these echoes from this kill, so you can share them out too. Just like you saw in the concept art, maybe we'll make you pick these up and absorb them into a vessel of some kind in the future. I hope you're all as excited as we are about this mechanic because it really changes the game up and makes it so much more fun, especially when paired with this next updated feature. And that feature is Loot Rarity. I showed it off briefly at the end of the last devlog, but when you open a chest now, you can find loot with Rarity, and that Rarity also dictates its stats. This UI you see here is temporary for development, and I'll show you some more concepts of how the flow of looting could look like a little later, but for now, let's talk about the feature a little bit more and how looting works. For example, this chest has a longsword in it, and it has some impressive stats, which you can see here on the UI, while this chest over here only has a short sword with lesser stats. You can see that the rarity here is shown with a color and wildly increased stats. This means that players will want to chase that higher tier loot and have more reason to extract with their loot, as they'll want to keep using it. A lot of other changes are currently happening, especially with combat. Much more on combat next year. In future devlogs, plan to give you all a deep dive into the updated combat systems. One last thing for you all is that when I showed loot rarity in that last devlog, a few people commented about how the loot chest opening experience was a bit boring, which is to be expected from a game in active development. But I wanted to show you all that this won't always be the case forever. You can look forward to opening a chest and loot appearing in a fun, engaging way, which makes you excited to see a rare, powerful item appear. These are just concepts exploring the idea, but you can also imagine rarer, higher tier chests, which might require you to spend some of those echoes we talked about earlier to open up, and these chests may include rarer loot. Or maybe you'll activate a challenge that costs echoes to activate, and these challenges put you up against a fearsome foe or two, and if you beat them, you will get a powerful reward. Hopefully these ideas help you theorize about how the brand new echoes mechanic and loot rarity compare together in really cool and unique ways. It also means that you, as a player, can choose to engage with more things using echoes, or just make a dash to escape when you have the required number of echoes. I think all of this introduces a lot of awesome risk-reward opportunities for playstyles and players to engage with in different ways. But that's it for this jam-packed devlog. There have been so many updates this week. Which was your favorite? Do you like the updated environments and plans around those from Sean? How about the echoes and loot rarity updates? Is that giving you the itch to loot for some rare weapon and try to extract with it? I can't wait to show you all much more in the new year, so stay tuned for much more on all of these things in future devlogs. As always, let us know what you thought to this devlog and leave your thoughts on everything shown down below in the comments. And if you want to see those devlogs, remember to subscribe and like this video so you can keep up to date with all things Project 2 going forward. We also have a Discord server for Project 2. You can join via the link on the screen or click the link in the description and let us know what you think to what we've shown of the game so far and chat to others watching the game develop too. Thanks again for watching this devlog for Project 2. Enjoy your end of the year no matter what you're celebrating, and see you all in the new year with even more devlogs.